emphasize the development of the company, but they don't force their entrepreneurs to find customers, because your first customer is the most difficult thing you'll ever do as a business person, in my experience. To find someone who will actually pay you that first time.
That isn't your mum.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's right. That isn't a family member. That's an actual customer.
Yeah.
And the other problem that people face when they're trying to sell a new product is one of the ways that people decide whether they're going to buy something is whether or not A, they know anyone else who's already bought it, or B, if there's other people in their domain that are already using it. And if your sales pitch is, well, no, this is new and revolutionary, you think, well, that's a wonderful sales pitch. It is like it is if you're talking to someone who's entrepreneurial and risk-taking and interested in revolutionary ideas. But if you're talking to a middle manager in a company, the last thing that person wants to hear is, well, you could be a risk-taker and introduce this into your company. The person's thinking, I don't want to put my job or reputation on the line for your product, even if it is revolutionary, in part because if it succeeds, I probably won't be rewarded for its success. So when we were selling our employee selection software, for example, we were academics, and so there was lots of things we didn't know about business. And one of the things we ran into, which was so funny, we talked to the people who were doing the hiring, and they had a certain budget, which was usually lower than, because they had virtually no budget for hiring, weirdly enough. So what we were charging for the product, which was still extremely modest, exceeded their budget. We said, well, look, you're going to make a 250-fold return on this. Pessimistically, it's 50. Realistically, it's 250, and the upper end was more like 500. So it's a no-brainer to implement this. It's like, well, we're budgeted on the cost side. What do you mean? Well, if we hire more productive employees, we won't be rewarded for that. We'll just be punished for spending more money on the outset. I thought, well, we can't even talk to you because I'm trying to sell you something that will benefit your company, but for you, as the decision maker, there's nothing but risk in implementing the new process. So that just blew me away. It's like, oh, I see. The hiring budget and the productivity budget aren't associated. So that's like a fatal impediment to our sales process. So that was, well, we learned lots of things about, and I came out of the whole enterprise with way more respect for people, especially for people who do sales. Jesus, that's such a brutal job. And, when people it's easy for people to, it's even a popular trope to be somewhat contemptuous of salespeople, all those salespeople.
Definitely in Britain. We're very reserved when it comes to selling in Britain. But I don't put ads on my podcast. I mean, there's ads on virtually every American podcast. I don't put ads. I don't need the revenue. So in a way, there's the old creative artist side of me that doesn't want to interrupt my work with ads. But like, if I started putting ads on my podcast, some people would be okay with it. There'd be a bit of a riot.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a real mistake because we're not giving the devil his due. It's really, really hard to be a good salesperson. And people like that are unbelievably rare and they're unbelievably valuable.
And nothing wrong with it, and it doesn't make you a bad person, and you're not selling your soul.
Well, it's also how are you going to generate revenue? And without that,
how's economy money even going to move in an economy?
And the other thing that happens with the artistic and maybe the entrepreneurial types too is that they end up with contempt for the business end of the process, and that's a real mistake. One of the things that I tell people who are artistically oriented, let's say, so they're in the entrepreneurial category, is, look, it's virtually impossible for you to monetize your product. That's the first thing you have to understand. So maybe you'll get lucky and you'll figure out a strategy. But if you add contempt for the sales and marketing process to that impossibility, you can be bloody well sure that all you're going to do is starve. So you better drop your contempt for the sales and marketing end of this if you want to sustain yourself through your life. And that's going to be a prerequisite for your creative endeavor. And so, and art schools and establishments like that do an absolutely dreadful job of.
Well, they don't teach it.
Not,
I was an
not at
artist.
all.
I was an artist. I went through art school.
Yeah.
They don't teach it.
No.
Never once.
No, I know. And it's, and I mean,
how are you going to commercialize your venture? How are you going to pay for your mortgage? What, just.
How are you going to buy food?
Yeah, with just a paintbrush and a canvas.
Oh, Jesus. And artists are in particularly dire position because as a visual artist, for example, you're not only competing with all the visual artists that now exist, and there's plenty of them, but you're also competing with all the dead artists who were who already have an established reputation and a body of work that's being still being exchanged in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to add contempt for the sales and marketing process to that. And you also probably have to understand that if you want to be an artist, that you're also going to have to have another job.
Yeah.
Because it's just, unless you want to bang your head against the wall until it's bleeding. It's so hard. And I mean, I've known some people who are outstanding artists, and I've known very, very few. I don't know if I've ever met anyone who was able to make a living from the outset of their career as a non-commercial visual artist. Brutally difficult.
Yeah.
So, and adding contempt to that is not helpful. You should be very thankful that sales and marketing people exist. Even I know there's that, what would you call it, the mercantilist commercial element to it that is sort of, in some sense, you can consider it distasteful from the perspective of higher aesthetics, but don't confuse your ignorance of something important, sales and marketing, with your moral purity. That's a big mistake. It's a big ethical